It works really well having a property manager. They're the buffer. So I no longer deal directly with the tenant. I get to pre-qualify just on paper, looking at their credit, income, things like that. And it takes all the emotion out of it.
The Apartment Gurus podcast is brought to you by Greenlight Equity Group, an apartment acquisitions and holdings firm co-founded by Carl York and Tate Siemer, host of this show. We offer you the opportunity to be an owner of cash-flowing, wealth-growing apartments without the headaches of being a landlord. These assets are recession-resistant, risk-mitigated, offer significant tax advantages, and are a great alternative to the stock market. Ready to check it out? Go to www.investwithgreenlight.com today to book a personal consultation with Carl or Tate. Again, that's investwithgreenlight.com. We look forward to meeting you. Welcome to The Apartment Gurus, where twice a week, host Tate Siemer brings you deep dive interviews with the wisest gurus in the apartment investing industry. These experts are sure to create game-changing value and inspiration designed to catapult your business to the next level. Be sure to reach out to Tate at www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. And now, here is Tate Siemer and the Apartment Gurus.
Welcome, everybody, back. Another episode of the Apartment Gurus podcast coming at you right now. And I'm really excited to have our guest on today, Bryan Driscoll. He's a real estate entrepreneur that has done just a lot of cool things in the space, from perfecting the BRRRR method, which we're going to talk about, to developing his own marketing agency that produces leads for investors. And we'll talk about his methods around that. And he's coming to us from the beautiful city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, kind of my stomping grounds first half of my life when I was in Cincinnati and went to school kind of halfway between Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. I had a girlfriend from Pittsburgh even for a while. So kind of coming from home there, Bryan. But I'm really glad to have you on the show, and welcome to the Apartment Gurus.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
You bet. You bet. So just to start out, just kind of give us a thumbnail glance into you and your path, especially in the real estate world. You've done a lot of cool things on both personally and professionally, and I want to get into those, but I'd like to hear your story from your perspective.
Yeah, sure thing. So I got into real estate and then failed miserably, right? So my dad took me to a Ron LeGrand seminar. I don't know if you know Ron.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Back in I think it was 98. I was 18 years old. I'm sitting in a seminar, and in the back of the room, they get me for $1,800 for the course, pull out my credit card, which is a ton of cash, and I buy the course, right? So then I partner up with one of my buddies, his name's Steve, and we start putting the ads in the newspapers. Back then it was newspapers. It's like we buy houses with their phone number, and we got bombarded with people that wanted to sell their house, which was great, but I didn't know what to do with them. So I'm meeting with these people talking about, hey, I'm going to buy your house. I'm not going to give you any money for it, but we're going to owner finance it. It just didn't click. I did that for a while and it just didn't work out. I failed, right? So then I circle back 10 years later, maybe 15 years later, I got back into real estate. Primarily, I was looking for my own house, like the house to live in. And I was looking around on Craigslist, found a wholesaler, bought a property off them, and then saw the wholesale fee. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can do my own marketing and generate my own leads. So that's kind of how I got into it. So I buy from wholesalers and then generate leads online too to find properties.
Got it. Yeah. And this is, for listeners, this is how a lot of you started in the single family space. And it's how we started at Carl York, my partner, and myself. We started in the single family space, and we bought a lot of houses from wholesalers. That's a real thing. And you've done, it sounds like, hundreds of single family deals at this point.
Yeah. So what I do is I buy properties. I've actually never sold a property either. I just buy them and hold them. Wow. Right. And I only buy in one zip code. So we've done a lot on the JV side. So I'll get people all across Pittsburgh that want to sell their house. And I'm really busy on time, so I don't want to drive far. So I'll buy the properties personally. It's in Bethel Park where I live. Mm-hmm. And then all the other ones, I'll just JV with people. But I buy them, on the BRRRR method, like you were saying earlier. I buy them, I fix them up, and I just keep them and hold them as rental properties.
Why only one zip code?
I don't want to drive far. I bought a property outside. It was in Peters Township. It's about 20 minutes away. My primary business is the marketing company, and then I just invest on the side. And I'm driving back and forth meeting contractors. This was before I had project managers. And I'm like, dude, this sucks. Every time I got to drive 30 minutes, then I'm talking to a contractor for 30 minutes or an hour, then I'm driving back. It's 2 hours.
Yeah.
And when you're remodeling a place, it's like you're getting called over there all the time when they're ripping the walls down, like with things they just found. So I'm like, you know what? I got to keep this like real close to home. I can get to properties within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So primarily just due to time is why I do it that way.
That's so smart. And just reminds me of the phrase, the riches are in the niches, right? Like the more you niche down in whatever you're doing, multifamily, single family, I think the more powerful you are, the more powerful approach you have, the more powerful thesis you have, et cetera. And you just become an expert in that market, in your zip code in this case. And that gives you the ability to high level analyze deals when you need to. You're going to know your price per door like the back of your hand, taxes, insurance, et cetera. Like you're never going to have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, when you're in an individual zip code like that.
Right. And it's nice too. It's hard to scale. So I'm going to have to start getting into bigger properties like commercial multis, things like that, because like it's a pain in the ass doing single family houses. Because it's like you got one, it's a little bit of money per deal, and you have to put all the same effort in versus other types of properties,
Yeah, really well said. And you're starting to see, like you said, the scalability factor is why so many of us are either in multifamily right now, are looking at multifamily, or scaling up into multifamily. That's just tremendous power and leverage, the abundance of riches and the scalability factor. So that's awesome. Well, talk to us a little bit about the BRRRR method. For listeners, you likely have heard of the BRRRR method if you've been a Bigger Pockets fan, or there's a lot of books out there on BRRRR, but give us kind of a high level view of the BRRRR method and how you have capitalized on it.
Yeah, sure. So right when I first got into real estate, I didn't have like a ton of cash sitting liquid, right? So I would go buy a property, say it was $100,000. I'd have to go get a commercial loan. I'd put 20% down, and that would get absorbed into the property. Like the property takes that and you can't get it back. Then you remodel. And then I would have like 40 grand sitting in a property and it's cash flowing, but I can't get that money back. So what I did was I saved up enough money to buy the properties cash. So I'll buy a property now for 100 grand cash. I'll put the $30,000 rehab into it. So I have like 130,000 out of pocket. The property now appraises at like 230. So I go to the bank and I'm like, hey, can I have my $130,000 back? I'm willing to take a loan. The property has a lot of equity, so there's no problem. So I literally get all my cash back. The property cash flows, and I'm using none of my money, and the tenant's paying it down. So it's not like, I know a lot of guys in the education space sell it like sexy things like that. In this case, you have to have a lot of cash, not a lot of cash, but enough to do the deal cash up front to avoid that down payment. I'm literally getting houses for free now.
It's amazing. Yeah, so powerful. So BRRRR, guys, stands for buy, renovate, refinance. I think it's re-rent at that point, if I'm not mistaken, and then repeat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, basically, you're just rolling the same cash over and over. Buying it, fixing it, renting it out, getting a refinance, and then doing it again.
Yeah, and in the multifamily space, this is particularly achievable because the value, as you guys know, of multifamily is those properties are valuated differently than single families. Single families, your 100% valuation is based on comps. And that's great if you've got lots of solid comps that support your value and you're good to go there. You're still subject to the individual opinion of one appraiser at the end of the day, the kind of the final say of the value of the property. But in the multifamily space, properties are valuated based on their income, right? So if you're able to go in and get the net operating income of a multifamily property up $25-$50 a month in rent per unit and significantly raise the NOI without raising your expenses too much, then you've just increased the value of the property by a pretty calculable amount. It's more of a science than an art in multifamily as far as valuation goes. So it gives you the ability to underwrite deals with the BRRRR method in play. And to me, there's just the whole adage about don't wait to buy real estate and wait. Like that is so powerful and so true. And your strategy, Bryan, of basically being able to hold on to all these single families that you bought and you're enjoying the cash flow from them and the appreciation that you may be getting in the market as well. That's just a recipe for tremendous success and having a really great portfolio.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny you bring that up too, because it's like that saying you just said, like, you always look like a genius owning real estate 10 years after you bought it.
Yep.
Like a lot of times I'll be buying some properties. I'm like, oh man, it's like right on the border. I don't know if I should do it, or I try talking myself out of it. Then you look back and you're like, dude, that was an awesome freaking deal.
Yeah.
It's like, I wish I had all of those, but especially people just getting into it. It's like, you just got to jump in. Like you just have to start buying them and get out of your head, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I like it. Just curious, have you ever been stung by an appraiser?
Yeah.
On deals? Yeah. We've had it. It's painful. We even had it recently on a multifamily deal where the appraiser didn't get the NOI upside, right? On the exit appraisal, the exit value on the appraisal, he was significantly lower than where we were and kind of blew up the loan that we were in. So talk about that a little bit. How do you deal with that and what consequences have happened with that?
Yeah. So when that happens, that stinks, right? So you're getting a property and you're projecting, okay, I'm pulling my money back out. And then they come back at like, I'm seeing it a lot now too with interest rates, not necessarily on the appraiser side, but the banks are tightening up. Yeah. And especially they're looking at like, they're calculating X factors, things like that. And they're putting like 10% occupant or unoccupied, 10% X factor. I'm like, dude, that's 30%. Like those numbers are unrealistic. They're trying to put in your value. So they're letting you borrow less. But the appraisers, like some things I found, I always meet the appraiser on site now. And I always walk through to them. I always point out all the improvements, because if you let someone else walk them through, they don't know that that roof's brand new or 5 years old. So I'm always pointing things out to them, and I'm always trying to make friends with them. Like you always want to be buddies with the appraiser, especially I invest in small areas. A lot of times it's the same guy coming.
Right.
But I'd give anyone a tip, meet the guy. Go through, lay out, hey, you know what? Check out the floors. All the floors are new. Toilets, we even did this, and like lay out everything that's new so that they feel comfortable giving an appraisal on the higher end. And that's interesting too. On the commercial is cool because you're right, you control it. Like you can bump the appraisal up. In single family homes, you're at the mercy of the appraiser and what houses in that near area sold for.
Yeah. I will expose the myth a little bit that, I mean, even with multifamily, you're still subject to an appraiser's opinion, right? Like, because they're going to look at your pro forma, they're going to look at current financials, they're going to look at the market, they're going to get their market cap rate, right? Which is somewhat subjective. And you definitely are kind of still at their mercy to a certain degree, but the income of the property always is the most paramount factor in commercial world of appraising. So it's a big difference. And a lot of people see it as a big advantage in multifamily as well. It's just more, it's a business deal. It's a commercial asset that produces income at a predictable level. You lose a tenant or two, you're not losing, you're going from 95 to 93 or 92% occupancy instead of from 100% to 0% in the single family world. The host of this show is a evangelist for the multifamily space. So you got to keep that in mind, that I'm a big believer, having coming from single family and done that world hard and heavy for 7, 8, well, actually over 10 years. We feel like when we switched to multifamily about 5 years ago that we kind of found our groove and found the niche that we really thrive in and want to continue to thrive in. But there's lots of ways in real estate to skin the cat. And a lot of us, if you interview 100 multifamily investors, a huge percentage of them are going to have started in the single family space. So
I think most start there and they graduate up because it's just bigger numbers.
Yeah. And I agree. And that's definitely one way to go. I definitely challenge I'm a one-on-one coach in this space, and we have a mastermind that I run in this space called Multifamily Octane, which if you're real serious about this business and wanting to really add a lot of velocity to your timeline and everything else, your business plan, it's definitely worth considering hiring a coach or getting into a mastermind. They're incredibly powerful at moving the needle in your business. And I coach people that there is a bit of a myth out there that you need to start small and graduate up. I've got clients that have done maybe a handful of single families and just read a book or a podcast or whatever and got interested in multifamily very seriously and decided to make the leap. And I think that that's possible. There are things that carry over from one space to the other very nicely. And then there's other things that are just very specific to one or the other space. And so, like I said, there's lots and lots of ways to skin the cat and to go about building your business and building your career and your trajectory. And it's super valuable, Bryan, to have you and your perspective here, because you've really not only mastered the single family space, but now you've developed your marketing agency designed for investors to get leads. And you're out there teaching the BRRRR method and teaching all of your strategies and that you've used. So,
Tate, I got a question for you here. So say on the BRRRR method in singles, I can normally turn a property around in like 60 days, get our cash back.
right.
In the multi side, I know that that's a lot longer because you got to increase the values. Like, what are you seeing on average for someone in that space to do the BRRRR method in a multi? Does it take like a year, or what's that turnaround time?
Yeah, it is usually about a year. Actually, you kind of hit the nail on the head, because when let's say you buy a 100 unit, let's 80 unit building, and you've got 80 leases in there. Well, they all start and stop at different times. And when you buy a community, you have to honor the leases that are in place. You just can't start raising rents and kicking people out and bumping people's rent in place kind of thing. You have to honor the terms of the lease. And so when you look at a year, you've got every lease, unless there's some weird outlier that's multi-year lease or whatever, but you've got every lease that's going to turn over within that 12-month period. And on those turnovers, you can go in and you can renew as the unit sits in its current condition and achieve a higher rent that way if the market dictates that. You can also renovate, whether that's with the current tenant in place or with a new tenant. You can renovate units and add things like solid surface countertops and washers and dryers and things that really add quality to the life of the tenant that they're going to see a lot of value in. You can raise rents that way. But the full cycle of that does take a solid year. So when we're underwriting deals, we'll look at refinancing after. A lot of times we'll use a bridge loan product, which will capture the CapEx budget in the loan as well. And there's some advantages to bridge loans. There's obviously disadvantages to them as well, mainly being interest rate and volatility in the interest rate. But we usually look at refining out of a bridge product in, say, 18 months, maybe 2 years. So yeah, it's very, very different where, a single family, you can go in and buy at a discount and get a lease on the place, prove the income, which is not necessarily as directly applicable in single family to multifamily, but nonetheless, you can show that income and show the value through that, and then often get the price point you need to get the refi done at the level you need to get your money back out.
Yeah, and you're right too on the appraisals. Like on the single family side, if you goof up and you get a bad appraisal, you might have to leave 20 grand in the property.
Yeah.
If you're on the multifamily side and that appraisal's off, that's real money there.
Yep. It's all scaled up, right? Like the gains, the losses, everything is scaled up. And this kind of gets into a different conversation, but so much of it depends on your property management, their ability to execute on the business plan that you've developed for the property, and you've determined the target rents that you want to get to and the target vacancy you want to get to. And it really comes down to your property manager, whether it's you or a third-party property manager executing on that business plan. Like I said, it's kind of a different conversation, and we talk about this a fair amount. I'll just mention something real quick for listeners. If you want a template of what I call an asset management plan, email me and I'll send it to you. An asset management plan is something that you develop when you buy a property, and you basically put into black and white with pictures and graphs and everything else exactly how you expect that property to perform and how you expect it to be managed and the metrics you want to hit over the first year to 3 years. And you develop this plan, you put it in a PDF, and you have everybody sign it, right? You have your property manager sign it, your construction manager, if you have one of those, your leasing agents, your maintenance people, even. Like, you want everybody on the same page. So if you want a copy of a template of one of those, I've actually never offered this on the show before, but email me at tate@glequitygroup.com, tate@glequitygroup.com, and I will send you, no strings attached, a a version of an asset management plan that I think is just a fantastic tool to have in your tool belt. So speaking of that, it kind of made me wonder, Bryan, do you manage your current portfolio, or how do you handle that?
No, I used to. I make mistakes on that too. So I was the guy, like on my first couple properties, I'd be managing myself and I'd meet with tenants. And they're tenants you shouldn't be renting to, and they're giving me the sob story. And I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm going to hook you up. And then I'd have people in here that shouldn't have qualified at all. 6 months later, they're trashing the place. They're not paying rent. So I found with me, it works really well having a property manager. They're the buffer. So I no longer deal directly with the tenant. I get to pre-qualify just on paper, looking at their credit, income, things like that. And it takes all the emotion out of it. But I got burned hardcore managing my own properties.
Yeah. For listeners, like, self-management for me is almost a bad word because amongst other things, I mean, you just spoke very well to kind of the disadvantage it puts you in as the owner, where you don't have that buffer of agency between you and the tenant. But amongst other things, it's just not efficient to what you need to be doing as an investor, right? Like, you as an investor, as the head of an investment firm, if you will, which in my opinion, that should be your approach. You should have a company, you should have a logo, you should have a thesis and a credibility kit and all those things. The management activity, meeting tenants, toilets, trash, tenants, right? Like, that's kind of the three things that people think about.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
It's horrible. And you're not trained necessarily how to do it. You're not experienced on how to do it. And it's not at all like overlapping with your other activity sets that you need to be really taking the reins on when you're running a company. So third-party management, while it can be very challenging to find a good third-party management that you align with, that does a good job for you, it's really, in my opinion, it's a necessity. And it kind of a different conversation, but in the multifamily space, the nicer of an asset and the bigger of asset that you're buying, the better your pool of property managers will be to pick from to manage that asset. That's a huge lesson that we learned in the first year and a half of buying multifamily. Was we bought some Class C minus, maybe even like arguably even lower than that, some properties that we felt we could turn around and improve the tenants' lives. And what we found was that the first manager we hired to manage those properties was just kind of a joke. I hate to throw people under the bus on the show, and I obviously won't name names, but we had to fire them within the first month or two, just realizing they weren't doing anything that we had expected of them. And the management that we've ended up with has been good, but Class C management, right? Like, their specialty is going to court and dealing with evictions and dealing with broken windows and trash properties. And they have to deal with a whole set of conditions and circumstances that a Class A, Class B manager just doesn't, because of the tenant class and the quality of the asset. So when you hear people say that bigger properties are often easier to own, buy, and manage, that's sometimes what they're referring to, is the level of third-party management that you can get to manage the property for you. So, and
you're right, property manager, you're right. That's a huge deal, because that's make or break.
It's make or break.
People cheap out on that. It's like, right. You know, when they 1% lower or things like that and go with the cheaper person, it's like, who wants to get the phone call about the toilet backing up on their kid's birthday and then screws their whole day up? It's on your mind. It's like, you just want people to deal with that stuff, and people that can do it in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know about you, Bryan, but it's still like, even 5 years or so into this business, I'm still shocked sometimes at what our property managers call us with, and like, hey, we had to deal with this at the property. Like, and I won't even get into it because some of it's just gross and kind of gory. But every time I get one of those calls, I'm reminded about why we don't do that. When we get to a point of, say, a few thousand units under management, at that point, it becomes advantageous to look at going vertical with your property management because of the efficiencies of scale and the ability to run and control your own property. But at that point, you're building out a team, right? Like, It's not going to be you answering those the toilets and trash calls. It's going to be your team, your property management staff that you develop and bring in-house, so to speak. So that's kind of getting to a different point in your business progression. But certainly initially, when it's your first deal, your first 3, 4, or 5, we've done 11 deals. We own, I think, 8 right now. And we're still at a point where our asset management program, which is managing the manager, right? When you're asset managing, that's you as the owner working intimately with the property manager to implement the business plan that you have in place. Like, that becomes a very, very key part of your business. And like you said, it's make or break, where the rubber meets the road. Do you have a single manager that manages your whole portfolio?
Yeah. So here's what I did. And so I'm in Pittsburgh, right? And one of my buddies is a fairly large investor. So, and he opened up a property management company. He has like, I don't know, 600 houses, 600, 700 properties, something larger. And I'm like, hey, dude, can you property manage my stuff? And I noticed if I find a property manager that also owns their own properties and manages their own properties, I've had way better success there because they're treating my properties as their team's just built, like they're construction guys and everything. And they're going to deal with my properties the same as they do theirs. Yeah. Versus other companies, like there's a lot of property managers I've seen and I've worked with in the past that didn't work out as well, that are just property managers and not involved in the business. And it's not as, I don't know what the right word is, but I just don't like it that much. They don't do as good a job. Yeah. You basically have your whole portfolio under one umbrella then. Yeah, actually, I have 2 property managers though. I split it just because I want a contingency plan also. It's like if anything ever happens with the one, I want to just be able to move all the properties over to the other guy. Because if you go to a property manager in a panic mode, that's usually a flag. It's like, hey man, I don't have anyone managing my properties right now. You try to move it could be a red flag that it's like, hey, wait a minute, why isn't anyone taking these or why'd they drop here or whatever? That's a good point. That's a really good point. What are the secrets to you and to your asset management and kind of keeping things going at a really good level with your property managers? So my property managers, well, first I remodel all my properties before I stick someone in them. Okay. So my properties don't need that much maintenance. And I'm looking at, on the renting side, I'm in an A-class neighborhood. So I'm looking at like 650 to 680 or above credit scores, no criminal. I'm really strict on who I rent to, because if I get good people into my properties, they stay and they don't damage them. Versus a lot of people are like, you know what, I'll take lower quality tenants. And it depends on your neighborhood and what your properties are like, whatever the neighborhood dictates. But I would rather hold out. And I'll actually rent, which most people say they don't agree with, but I'll rent a little bit under market value to get that A+ tenant that sticks around for a long time versus just always being right at the market. You know what I mean? Yeah. So sometimes if it rents like $1,650, I'll be at like $1,599. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. I've also found whenever I'm renting places too, if my price is a little bit too high, I get subpar tenants, like subpar people applying. Once I get to that sweet spot, then I have my choice of people that I'd want to rent to. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Love it. Let's switch gears a little bit. You're obviously a marketing expert. You've developed your marketing company. What's the name of your SEO, your marketing company? Yeah, I own a company. It's called Motivated Leads. Motivated Leads. Okay. And talk a little bit about what you guys do and how you do it. Sure. So, and I'll talk about more on the commercial side. So what we do, we deal primarily in the single family space. So we generate leads on a national level for investors that want to buy properties. Like wholesalers, flippers are our primary clients, right? The same methods work, not necessarily on our pay per lead side, but on a custom side for apartments, multifamily, commercial properties, things like that. You can do the same strategies on Facebook, Google, pay-per-click, things like that to generate off-market deals, you know, which is huge. Dealing with an owner direct versus going through brokers, things like that. If you can get to the owner direct, a lot of times you can make more beneficial deals on both sides. Yeah. And for those of you that have worked with me or have my coaching clients, and those of you that have listened to the show for a bit, you know that we are 100% in the broker relations game. In other words, we source all of our deals through brokers, and that's what I teach. And it's a simple premise of 90%. Well, first of all, you got to ask yourself what you're looking for, right? If you're looking for, say, 40 plus units, right? And even let's say 60 plus, 90% of those properties are going to get sold through a broker, if not more. Those are the properties that we want. And that's where we put all our eggs in the broker relations basket. And that's what I coach and mentor on. However, let's say the 12 unit to 60 unit space,
is there's a high opportunity level there because you're dealing with owners that are often mom and pop type owners, and they aren't necessarily as investor savvy as the institutional owners that own 150 units or 200 units, whatever that looks like. And often they just haven't kept up with CapEx maintenance, and they haven't kept up with market rents. And so there can be really fertile opportunity in that space to go in and find an owner that's maybe in somewhat of a distressed situation. Their property needs maintenance they can't afford. Their property's not cash flowing the way that it should. Maybe they've got debt that's coming due. A lot of times they don't have debt at all because they've owned it for 30, 40 years. That can be an advantageous thing to you. You can often generate a seller finance scenario in that situation, but it's a different game, right? You're generating leads from sources like what Bryan provides in the single family space, or you're skip tracing properties. And there's some great data sources out there. Reonomy is one that I'll mention for you guys. I have no affiliation with Reonomy, but it's basically a data service that provides target property information in particular areas. And it gives you everything, like right down to the last time the property was financed and how much it was financed for and when the note might be coming due. And is it an out-of-state owner? Like, it really filters for a lot of very important applicable items, data points. And there's others out there. Crexi has an informational platform as well. And just to be transparent, at Greenlight, we did the direct-to-owner marketing for about a year. We had a employee that was dedicated specifically to marketing directly to owners. And we kind of had a moderate level of success with it. And there's some internal factors that I think contributed to that, but we didn't get what we wanted to get out of it in the way of properties. And we found that the properties that we were screening coming across our desks and writing offers on were properties that were coming from brokers. So with that said, I don't want to at all dismiss the opportunity that's available in the smaller multifamily space, because we started with a 12 unit, then we went to a 20 unit, and we own a 43 unit, we own a 60 unit, we own a 70 unit. So we've been in that space, and there are definite advantages to that space. Again, just back to the property management piece, that can be challenging because a 40 unit building is not going to provide enough income for on-site staffing, on-site leasing agent, on-site maintenance. You got to find a property management company that can handle managing that property without on-site staffing, which again gets into some challenges. But again, lots of ways to go about this, and starting in the small multi can be very good. And a lot of multifamily investors did that. So for you, Bryan, like, what would you say to somebody kind of interested or thinking about marketing direct to owner, direct to seller? What kind of secrets or tips do you have?
Yeah, what you're saying there too, you're so right. Like, people with big multifamilies aren't browsing Facebook, and they're usually not distressed. Normally in the single family side, we find distressed properties, inherited homes, beat up, they can't list them. It's a whole different animal in the commercial side and multifamily side, because they're investors. It's a different person. So if you're going to market for multifamilies and things like that on Facebook, that what I've found is you have to be extremely direct. So if we're marketing for multifamilies, pictures of the types of properties that you're looking for in your ads that are local to you. Don't just grab stock images. If you're looking for 10 unit building, put 10 units up there. If you're looking for big places, put those up there. And then I've also found too, a lot of times you're not necessarily going to, most of the time, someone's not going to click an ad, fill out the form, and come sell you their humongous property, right? But they may be interested, and you might be able to get them to engage. Once they click your ad, then you can retarget them on Facebook. That's like whenever you go into Amazon and you're seeing shoes following you around. We can do the same thing on online. And what we're going to retarget them with is like videos just on your cell phone. Hey, my name is Bryan. I buy properties in Pittsburgh, and give a little background. And then you're going to try to build that credibility with whoever that is. And then you can even use testimonials as ads, things like that. So more in the multi-space, you want to get people to engage with you, even if you're trying to raise money too. Like if you're trying to raise funds, same thing. You can push people to your channel, to your page, and then retarget them with brand building things so that it just builds your credibility, that they're like, you know what, this guy looks legit. I can do business with him versus just being a stranger off the street.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I love the video. Something that my buddy Sterling White used a lot when he was marketing direct to seller. And he would actually, when he was interested in a single property and trying to get the seller to interact with him and possibly sell to him, he would go to the property and take a selfie video of himself out in front of the owner's property and would say, "Hey, my name's Sterling and I buy properties in this," just kind of go through everything you went through to build credibility and build rapport. And I think that's super powerful. And a lot of times, like, again, back to Reonomy for a second, like, you have their cell phone number, you have their email address from this data site. And so you can make pretty personal contact with them to establish that, hopefully that relationship that's going to lead to some sort of transaction. Another thing to keep in mind, guys, is in the multifamily space, a lot of times these investors will own multiple properties and will have the ability to talk to you about maybe selling more than one property or a different property than the one you've targeted. So that's not necessarily the case in single family. Usually it's a single owner, distressed owner that needs to sell for whatever reason. So just one other kind of nuanced difference there in the space.
And in the multi-space too, like you're talking, it's a relationship business. So you're talking with brokers, you have to build that relationship.
Absolutely.
And same thing online. Like if you're going to make a video, like you said, Sterling was doing in front of a property, it's not really like a spray and pray type of thing. It's more like hone in on what your target is and nurture that versus just spraying and praying and with generic type of content.
I'm so glad you brought that up. And such a foundational difference between single family and multifamily is the single family space is largely transactional. You're typically dealing with a one-off situation where you can help somebody one time and contribute to them one time. But in multifamily, it is relational, man. It's 100% relationship built business. And for those of you establishing relationship with brokers, I'll give you this little gem is like, when you're talking to brokers, you always want to frame the conversation as, we want to put 1,000 units in our portfolio in Columbus, Ohio in the next year and a half. And we need your help to do that on a deal to deal basis, right? Like, we're a relationship based firm. Like, we believe strongly in the quality of our relationships and doing deal after deal after deal with the same people. And so, like, I always create that vision, right? That I'm not just kicking the tires and I'm not just out like shaking the trees for the lowest hanging fruit deals. Like, we are establishing a relationship. And I'll even say, if there's a deal like that they're marketing that I'm calling them about or talking to them about, I'll say, look, this one may or may not work and we'll do our very best to make it work. But hopefully here, much more importantly, is that we get to work with you on an ongoing basis for many years. And then one last gem I'll drop is my buddy Bo Beery, which is BEERY. He wrote just a tremendous book for investors on the broker relations piece called How to Be a Multifamily Investor Who Dominates, I think is the name of the book. But his last name is BEERY, not BERRY, BEERY. He's a high volume broker out of Tampa, which is one of the hottest markets in the country. He moves hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of property every year. And he wrote this book specifically for us investors to really master the game of the broker relations piece. And it's on Amazon. Highly recommend you guys picking that up. When people start in my coaching program, my mastermind, I send them a copy of that book right out of the gate because it's just such good foundational information, and systems and processes are in there to really start your marketing game off well. So
that's the difference of getting that deal, having them call you before it hits the market and not.
That's it. And look, I'm sure this is actually probably just as true in single family. Like, once a deal hits the market, it's kind of, the opportunity is deflated for you significantly because all of a sudden you're going to be in competition. If it's a good asset, it's a good deal as they're marketing it, you're going to be in competition with other buyers. And then you're talking hard earnest money on day one. Sometimes you're talking a higher price point, you're talking shorter terms, et cetera. So, and that's really how Bo Beery defines an elite investor, which is what he wants you to become. An elite investor is somebody, just like Bryan said, brings you the deals before they hit the market. And look, if you're a broker and you get a $18 million listing and you're looking to do the very, very best you can for that seller, you're going to take it to your top 3 buyers that you know can perform, you know will take the opportunity seriously that and can close on the transaction, right? Like that's where you're going to go first. And so you want to become one of those people for sure. So yeah, well said, Bryan. Appreciate that. So I got a bunch of notes from you before we started recording. And one thing just really stuck out to me that I got to ask you about. You went from being 5'8", 240 pounds to 187 pounds with a 6-pack. Dude, that's like a man after my own heart there. That's like, so you're speaking my language. So what was your method to your madness there?
Yes, it's a funny story. It was back January 2022, right? I took my family to Disney World and I come back and I see a picture. I'm like, man, am I fat? Like I was big, like my face was all puffy.
Yeah.
And then coincidentally, one of my buddies owns a title company here in Pittsburgh. His name's Ryan Fisher. And I saw a picture of him. He went from 290 pounds to competing in a bodybuilding contest in like 6 months.
Wow. Wow.
So I hit him up like, dude, how'd you do that? He's like, well, I hired Stacy. I'm like, who's Stacy? So there's this lady in Pittsburgh. She's like 65 years old and she trains bodybuilders. So I went up to her. Me and my wife did it together. I'm like, hey, Stacy, what do I got to do here? Like, what did Ryan do? I want to do that. And what she did is all natural. She set me up on a macro, like looking at my numbers and what I'm eating.
Yeah.
And I always looked at what I was eating. Like I'd look at some things. I'm like, yeah, I'm eating healthy, which really I wasn't. So it's like, it has too much fat or this or that.
Right.
So she broke me down into looking at macros. So basically the numbers were eat 200 grams of protein, 150 or less grams of carbs, and 50 less of fat. So I did that, which sucks. Like I'm eating chicken and it changed everything I'm eating. And then I did cardio, which I still do cardio 4 days a week and lift weights 2 days a week. But I dropped it off. It took me a year because I sucked at it. I would eat healthy for 6 days. And then the 7th day I break.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to do it consistently, but yeah, I went down to like 187 at the lowest, and I'm holding like right around 195 now. So it taught me for that year also what being healthy is, and I'm able to still have like a couple slices of pizza here and there when I want, but it taught me how to eat, and I'm eating all day long. It's not like you're just eating different things that feed your body the right stuff.
Yeah. The 200 grams of protein things, there seems to be some magic to that. Alex Hormozy, many of you may follow on YouTube, is just a tremendous entrepreneur and started in the gym space. And he eats dessert every night. But his secret is I just get 200 grams of protein every day. And he almost lets the rest fall where, I mean, if you got 150 grams of carbs to work with, that's a fair amount of carbs. And so you're not limiting yourself too much. You're just getting your body what it needs to build muscle. And you're staying away from fats and sugars and that sort of thing. But
processed stuff was a big one to cut out. Like so much stuff's processed food. Right. I think that had a lot to do with it too, because it's like you can get carbs in a banana or like wheat bread, or you can get carbs in cereal and Oreos.
Right. Yeah. Two very different things that are going to serve you very differently. But it's something on the show. We stick pretty close to real estate and particularly commercial multifamily real estate. But to me, this is like all part of being an entrepreneur. Like you guys have heard me say this before in different words, like the true opportunity for me and being an entrepreneur and running a business that you love, and that's key, is being the best version of yourself, right? And the more that you can move the needle in any part of your life, physical, spiritual, financial, business, relational, all that stuff, it's going to serve all the other parts of your life better. And it's kind of like a rising tide lifts all boats here. Like if you want to become better at what you do professionally, consider that getting in shape and getting into a body that you love and you respect and shows to other people, that's going to really move things for you. Like I can almost promise you guys that. Like, and it's probably not a surprise to any of you to hear that. It might be a reminder, but physical fitness to me is like foundational. It's kind of like the ground floor. And if you get things right in that part of your life, it's going to really pay off in your business, I think, especially.
I noticed it keeps my brain clear. I got a lot more energy.
Yeah.
And I always shoot for like, my goal was to get a 6-pack when I weighed 240. Like, I didn't think I'd be able to hit the goal. But once you get there, it builds confidence, things like that. But it's just, who wants to accumulate all of this wealth and not be able to enjoy it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That another great point, right? And when you're in shape, you go on vacation, you can walk on the beach and feel good about yourself and go skiing or try different physical activities and not be just completely sore and out of shape. Like, it's huge. It's just a huge upgrade that you get to give yourself. I see this as like giving yourself the upgrade in life, right? And gifting yourself the confidence and just the general feel good that comes with the physical fitness piece. I think it's just huge. And I actually think this is probably the first time that we've ever really talked about this on the show, but I'm a believer. I hired a fitness and nutrition coach in October and have made some good progress. I can relate a little bit to when you say that you kind of sucked at it, like the counting macros and doing that whole side of things is a little bit of work. Like, it's a change in lifestyle to keep track of everything you're putting in your mouth. But the payoffs are just tremendous.
The trainer too, I don't know if it was for me, but I was able to go in and she helped me be accountable. Like, that helped a lot. It's like, you know what? If I'm going to go pig out, I'm going to go get weighed when I go there next time and she's going to bust my chops.
Right.
So like, it is what it is, versus just me trying to do it myself and then I'm too busy today.
Yeah. Got it. Well said. Well, Bryan, this has been just a tremendous, very quick episode here. Like, it just flew by for me. So any kind of final thoughts for the investors that are listening here, whether they're coming from from single family and getting into small or even larger multi, like, what would you say overall to those folks?
I would say overall, at whatever stage you're in and whatever you have on your mind, just do it. Like, I talk to so many investors that are just stuck in their head. They're like, you know what? I want to get into multis, but, and then they find all of these reasons they can't do it. And most of the reasons aren't real. Like, you think they are, but then you find out, okay, once I start doing whatever it is, it's actually way different and way easier than I envisioned it. But it took so long to get to that point. I'm a believer in, like, jump out of the plane and build the chute on the way down. Like, you're going to figure it out. You have to take that first step to doing what you want to do. Yeah.
I love the way, kind of the ready, fire, aim. What's another way of saying that approach? I forget who said it. Somebody famous, might have been Bill Gates, said an entrepreneur needs to be able to make a decision with about 70% of the required information, right? And have faith and confidence in yourself that you can fill in the gaps and go out and be resourceful and have the right network around you and the right coach in your corner, the right mastermind in your corner, whatever that looks like to you, to basically pull it off at the end of the day. And those are the people that really make a splash in their industries, are the people that are willing to just go do it, like Bryan said. So,
and don't be scared to fail. You're going to fail when you do that. That's learning lessons. Like, be uncomfortable, be okay being uncomfortable.
Yeah. And be okay with failure. Like, fail forward, right? Use the failure to drive you into the future and not get you hung up on where you are right now or in the past. Like, there's a book called Fail Forward. I actually haven't read it, but I love the concept, right? Like, you're using whatever circumstances are currently present for you to drive you into the future, and you're going to make mistakes, right? Like, it just happens. And I'll finish on this. I have a buddy who's in the single family space, and he's like, Tate, I've lost money on 40 deals in my career. 40 deals he's lost money on, but he said, I made money on 400 deals. So that's 10%. 1 out of 10 is a pretty good rate. And volume is your friend at that point, right? Because you're not hanging your hat on 1 or 2 or 3 deals. You're ramping it up. And for the most part, you're going to be successful. So
I'm with you.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. Bryan, thanks so much, man. This was a really valuable hour, and really appreciate all your expertise, tips, and thoughts, man. I can tell that you're going big places, and I wish you all the best with your marketing company and with your future multifamily career. If there's ever anything I can do to be helpful at any level of that, I'm here for you. So
thanks for having me on.
You betcha. And listeners, we thank you as always and appreciate you hanging on to the end of another episode here of the Apartment Gurus podcast. And as you know, we're doing 2 of these a week and coming out fast and furious. So stay tuned, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Take care, everybody. This episode of the Apartment Gurus is being brought to you by Greenlight Equity Group. Greenlight Equity Group acquires and operates cash-flowing multifamily assets in progressive metropolitan markets such as Salt Lake City, Idaho, San Antonio, Oklahoma City, and Columbus, Ohio. Greenlight targets consistent, solid returns for its investors and a healthy environment for residents by operating high-quality, safe, clean, affordable apartment communities. To learn more about Greenlight and to sign up for the investor list, go to www.glequitygroup.com.
This has been The Apartment Gurus with Tate Siemer. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. To contact Tate, go to www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. He loves to hear from you and thanks you for being a valued listener. Just a reminder that you are the guru. See you on the next episode of The Apartment Gurus.